Mr. Wise, his time is money.
Good evening. We're about to start this meeting of the Sumner County Board of Education for June 16th, 2020. Before we do, I'm going to stand for a moment of silence and follow that with the Pledge of Allegiance to our country's flag. Anyone who would like to join me, please feel free to do so. Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. First item on the agenda is roll call. Mr. Johnson, you have the roll, I'm sure. Well, hold on to it then. Next item on the agenda is the adoption of the regular agenda. Is there a motion? Motion approved by Ms. Bachman, second by somebody over there, Mr. Daniels. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. We have an agenda. Next item on the agenda is the adoption of consent agenda. Is there a motion? Motion approved by Mr. Wise, second by Ms. Hayes. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Next item on the agenda is consideration of the minutes, discussion and interaction regarding the minutes of the May 19th regular meeting. Is there a motion?
Motion approved.
Motion approved by Mr. Wise, second by Mr. Daniels. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Next item on the agenda, recognition, hearing, and delegations. We have none. As I don't guess, do we? None, okay. And we don't have any matters involving council?
No.
That's always good news. Reports from the director, Dr. Phillips.
All right, good to see everybody.
Absolutely.
We're not in the gym, are we?
I know. Appreciate you guys letting us do that. We thought it'd probably be better if we got back down here if we could, and so we're still distanced a little bit, but but not being in the gym, even though it's a good space when we do the budget workshops and stuff, but it's good to be back down here. Just a few things we're going to have in my report. So we'll have two things that are kind of a little bit lengthy. One, we're going to talk to you a little bit about our draft reentry plan, and we're going to meet with, talk with principals about that tomorrow. And that's kind of a high-level view. We're going to take kind of a two-step process in this. One, kind of going through a high-level review so people kind of feel reassured that we're planning for a bunch of different scenarios. I think other school districts have released some pretty granular plans. And I'm a little bit, even though we have a lot of that information, I'm a little bit nervous about releasing that this early, because if we've learned anything, the world can change a lot in a month. And I would rather get closer to mid-July before we say this is what we intend to happen on day one. So just when we go through that tonight, just realize that we're just talking at a 10,000 foot view now, just so people kind of understand what we're thinking and some considerations, those kind of things. And then when we get to July, we will have granular, this is what we believe based on our current situation we're planning for 3 weeks from now as school opens. So just to let you know that. And then we're going to have a presentation from newest member of our leadership team, and Scott will introduce her. But Jean's going to talk to us about Sumner Connect and some of the stuff that we're doing for content as we scale up content for online learning from home. So we're going to go over those two things. So it'll take a little time for us to go through that and to take any questions from you guys. One bit of information that's not pleasant to share, but you know, back I mentioned it at the commission meeting when we had education and budget last night. Unanimously passed our budget on to the full commission for the 29th. And I mentioned to them that someone asked me a question, one of the commissioners asked me a question about BEP and how confident I was about BEP. And I said, well, I'm not very confident about BEP because the legislature was kind of in a split deal this year, in and then out and then back in a short time So we used the latest estimate that we had, which is what we always do. And it typically, you know, without a pandemic, doesn't move around much. But I was cautious about that. And if you guys remember, I set aside that restricted money because I said I'm just a little nervous about how that's going to go. And Amanda and I were trying to be thoughtful about, you know, this could be a multi-year thing in regard to BEP on revenue. So I guess last night, probably 9 o'clock or so, I received a revision downward about 2.7 million that they cut out of the last estimate. So we've received those kind of emails before. For those that have been up here a while, sometimes we're receiving them in January. Typically, this time we just got it early. And I think everyone's understanding the situation that the state's in, and we felt like it would be reduced. And that's why we tried to plan for this, so it would not impact what we were planning to do for this fiscal year. And so I'm glad that we were thinking ahead financially for that. But they did send us the revision. It's about 2.7 million less than what we currently have in our budget for revenue. So just wanted to give you that bit of news. You know, I reached out to our to Senator Hale and Representative Lambert this afternoon to let them know the impact to us here. I always like for them to know the dollar amount because they deal with large numbers too, and big numbers with the state. And so I always kind of try to keep them informed about what is actually happening as far as it relates to us. Long story short, you know, we knew and they knew that we were going to be revised downward. They didn't realize probably that it was going to be quite that much. Nevertheless, you know, I don't know if they don't know. I think that they would both be very supportive if the state went back into session in January, and the outlook from the state's perspective was much better, that they could revise that back up or a portion of it back up or something of that nature. But you know, they don't know at this point. So I know that they're always extremely supportive. But it's not a definite no. Yeah, I wouldn't think that anything's a definite no. I think that you know, for us, we'll plan on having the revised revenue number, which is about 2.7 million less than what we had in our budget, and we'll be hopeful that good news will be coming after January. But until then, you know, we'll deal with what we got to deal with. I can tell you this, that and I did mention this to Representative Lambert. You know, some districts were not as financially sound as we are. And so they were already trying to figure out and deal with how to manage some reduction. And now I think when they have the revised number, that may even create a bigger issue. But luckily for us, we're in a good position, and so we'll be able to manage that. So just so you know that. All right. Have you got? Okay, Chris has my slideshow up, so we're going to walk through this a little bit here. Kind of a 10,000-foot view of what we're talking about with reentry for the school district. One, I think this is what we're trying to do, our response planning goal for the district. It's pretty straightforward. Supporting student learning across multiple platforms, because that's what we will have throughout this school year. Considering every possible precaution for the health and safety of students and staff. It's pretty straightforward. I think it kind of sums up what we believe our mission will be in regard to responding to COVID-19. This document, kind of walk through this. I think this is where most districts will eventually land. There has to be some segmented way to know what you're going to do, depending on what the virus looks like within your community. And so that spread and the infection rate is given daily. So parents can look at that without having to call or rely on us to give them that number every day. And I think that's pretty much medically the way that the state health departments and local health departments look at it. They look at it across an entire community, like Sumner County or your county. So when we look at what we're doing and what we're planning, and of course, in July, we're going to give you a lot more meat to this about what it looks like, and we'll talk about those things. But if you have minimal spread within the county, then we'll be looking at doing predominantly traditional normal schedule. What traditional means for us is a normal classroom and normal schedule supported by Sumner Connect. We know that we're going to have particular issues where we have portions of the building, classrooms, or certain things that maybe we have to make adjustments to, but it might not be the entire school or campus or all students being out of school shifted to remote learning. We also know that we're going to have some students and their families impacted directly from exposure, and at that point, those students would be transitioned to remote learning, online learning, but not their peers, because we're dealing, obviously in Sumner County, we have schools of 120 to 1,700. So there's going to be some different responses in that green box depending on what happens. And I know everyone wants the granular detail of that, but we really don't want to give that until we have the July meeting, and that'll be forthcoming. Safety and health considerations, mitigation strategies, and some of those we have outlined there a little bit. There are others that we'll consider, but obviously under the traditional method, mitigation strategies about movement of students, how we do that, whether that's staggered or whether it's alternating, trying to reduce close contact, trying to make sure that we have some practices in place that help us with social distancing and use of large spaces and those kind of things will certainly be something that even if we're in a traditional school pattern, we will still try to make school-based decisions with a plan for each school to do that. The masks are recommended but not required in close contact spaces. I've had some calls and with some doctors that were connected to us that do infectious disease, and they're working on reentry plans for universities and other places, some K-12 school systems. And obviously the mask issue for us is going to be one that, depending on what research you believe, obviously we're going to have a bag of whether people feel like that's necessary or not necessary, because we're dealing with parents and students of obviously the age range of kindergarten all the way up. And so managing that and then what the belief of the parent is will influence that as well. So for us, we think our position would be that masks are recommended but not required. And then obviously close contact spaces, which obviously that's kind of self-explanatory about what that is something that if you read the research, that's where you have the best chance for exposure. If you're around someone for a prolonged period of time, more than 15 minutes in close contact, then your risk probably goes up if they're symptomatic. So, we kind of wanted to put that in there to make sure people, and when we give the detailed outline, it will have some of those links to research studies that parents can read themselves. So there'll be a lot of information that we can give out, and then they can make their own decision about what's best for their child, and staff as well. The moderate and yellow box here, that's the things that some people are talking about with modified scheduling. And so when we put modified alternative scheduling there, those are the things we're talking about that you may have heard other districts mention A/B schedule, alternate week, AM, PM, some of those things that are out there that may be possible, may not be possible. A lot of it depends on factors beyond instruction, like not only space, but your teachers, support staff, transportation, a lot of other things that go into that impact whether you actually can or cannot do those things, okay? And some districts have just come out altogether and said these alternate modified schedule things will not work for us. And some of them deal with those support features that they just can't do. But we do feel like if we get to the yellow box and we have moderate spread throughout the community, that obviously we'll have a plan for having some of those alternate schedules available to do. A little bit of the safety and health concerns considerations change in the yellow box. If we're still on campus when we have conditions for moderate spread, then masks will be required in classrooms. I think at that point, medically, you're to the point of having to say, hey, if you're going to be in close contact in a classroom for more than 15 minutes, then you're going to have to be willing to wear a mask, okay? Otherwise, then we'll have to have an alternative, online platform for you to utilize at home. Limited movement of students in the building, we talked about that a lot. And then more intensive mitigation strategies, and we'll put a lot of detail around what that exactly means if we have to go to that stage. And then I think when you get to the far right, that substantial spread, quite honestly, if we get to that point, I think that would be obviously an all online, no option, everybody's at home, and we would have other considerations that maybe have to be in place because we're not in school. So obviously no large gatherings. That's going to be kind of like we experienced when schools were shut down by the state this year. So that right-hand box really is when it gets to be kind of not only probably a Sumner County thing, but probably a regional and a state thing where we just have a lot of cases out there and the spread is not controllable. We're proposing in the agenda, I know we usually don't have a July study session, but we feel like that's going to be necessary because if we're going to talk through all of the meat that goes on to these situations, especially the green box and some to the yellow, then I think we're going to need to have a pretty extended conversation with the board just so you guys know what we're planning and what we're going to share with principals and talk about. And so in the board agenda tonight, I think the first new business item is the board schedule for 2021. And so we are going to put in a July the 14th meeting. And that's really just going to be about the reentry plan. That's all we're going to have on the agenda and talk about. It's what all goes with these things. In that plan, to go along with the green box, yellow box, and hopefully not the red box, but supporting teaching and learning, and so there will be a lot of items there about how we're going to do Sumner Connect if we have to take that option, and how we're going to support that. Classroom, school, and district closure plans. I know when we talk in our room, conference room, and we're discussing what parents want to know, they want to know what's going to happen if someone tests positive in my child's school. That's what they want to know. And we're going to have some very specific detail around what's going to happen so they know. And it's going to be different at the school, at the classroom, at the school, and at the district level. And when I say different, meaning, as I mentioned with the green box earlier, you're going to have probably a consistent response, but it may look different if you're considering a large high school with limited spaces that you restrict, and then a smaller elementary school. And when we talk about mitigation strategies for that first 9-week run, there may be some limited access to campus. We may not have Grandparents' Day. we might not do parent night this year. We might have to do that through a Zoom call or something. I mean, there's going to be some things that are different just because we're traditionally bringing people onto campus for big events or things that happen, and we probably are not going to feel good about necessarily doing that over and over and over as we get into the school year. Building use and cleaning practices. Obviously, the cleaning practices are going to be a little bit different for us going into the school year. Student transportation adjustments. You know, we're talking about having from a personnel standpoint, we're already short bus drivers, and we have been for a number of years, not unlike most districts. But if we have you know, a bus driver that tests positive and they can't make that route and we can't absorb that route, then we have to, I think, let parents know in July that there's a possibility that we have to close routes for a period of time because we don't have anyone to pick those students up and adjust the route to where it would be feasible to do that. So some things around student transportation. There will also be some things around the building use segment that we ask principals to work through because every building's a little bit different with how students arrive and leave, especially with bus arrival and dismissal. And so when we talk to principals and we talk about how they plan for their building, that'll certainly be one of the things that they'll look at, obviously, along with a bunch of others. School nutrition support, if we have schools that are out for a period of time, whether we start the grab-and-go meals again and do that in select locations or not, will be a decision that we make. And then co-curricular activities, obviously, that's a big one. If you don't move to the yellow box or the red box, then you know, whether the state gives us guidance through TSSAA or not, we'll have to make some decisions about how we handle those things once we get to sporting events that are going to happen on our campuses. We put that box down to the right just to show kind of how the number gets tracked out and what it looks like now for Sumner County. I may have messed that up, Chris. Probably hit the wrong button. Yeah, man. I think there was one last slide, wasn't there? Oh, that's it, yeah. I don't know, I think it was out of order. So, you know, when all of this kind of the world changed, we started with our team here at the district, and of course Scott's team's been broken into a number of committees and groups that include the principals across the county. Sumner Connect weekly meetings, grab-and-go meals. Of course, you guys have had the input, the data about that. Student support teams, and I think Katie and some folks headed that up for us. And I think we mentioned that at the last board meeting about how many contacts we'd had with students. Teachers and principals, I think 99.7% student contact, which is really good. The positive parent surveys, we gave you guys some feedback about that. And we'll continue to do that. I think we have a plan to survey parents before we get to the July 14th plan, just to ask them some basic questions about how they feel about reopening of schools and those kind of things. And then of course in July we'll have the reentry plan that we'll share with you guys and talk about. I think for us, we just want to always be committed to trying to make sure that we can do what our goal is, which I think is important. And we're going to, I think, be like every other district. We're going to have a really good, solid plan that has to be fluid to some extent, but you have to have a framework to go by, or every day you're just continuing to kind of change and guess and go with the latest thing. And I think parents need more advance notice than that. And I do think that we'll have, in my mind, the school year split up into 4 9-week runs. And so hopefully for us, we can tell parents that we're going to do our best to plan and evaluate as we move from the first day through the fall break. And then there may have to be a substantial change to all of this for the second 9-week run. And I'll be glad to answer questions. I may not have the answer, but we can talk about it.
Ms. Brown?
I just think entirely differently than that, for some reason. To me, this is more a plan that will be put against us by the county executive. And so we really wouldn't have a choice what's going on in the community. What I'm thinking about is, so the community has this outbreak and we don't have any in our schools. So we're sending all these kids out. Why would we do that? I don't understand. In other words, if things are fine within the schools itself, why would we want to get to the point where we're gonna shut it down like we did before and send them all home so they can all go all over the place?
My thoughts about that, twofold. Number one, we can't keep them all the time, so they're going to be exposed to people that are not at school. And two, we don't have any way, nor is there a medical way to test them every time they come to school to see if they're okay today. I mean, if they're asymptomatic, then obviously they're asymptomatic until we know that they're not. So, you know, having the issue of spread and cross infection is going to be there because we're not all going to shelter in place for the entire school year.
The other thing I noticed was I felt like, and this is a personal thing and from my doctor, is why not start out with all up with masks, whether they want to wear them or not, just because you may never get past that other point and of having to go to masks. Because I can see kids ragging some kids where their parents are making them wear them and they don't want to, so they pull them off. And we get into this nah stuff that a teacher doesn't want to deal with. I just feel like all or nothing and get through with it and say, that's it. That's the way it is. You have your mask. You know, just rather than, and if you're in, I know special ed, you've got issues and you're going to have to just do what you think best because you can't exactly control a lot of these things. But I don't know. I just, to me, all this will be controlled by the county anyway. We won't have any say. They'll decide when we have to shut down, no matter what.
Well, I think the focus, and you may be right, and especially if you get to the red box, you're going to be right.
Right.
But I think the green and the yellow, and I think the focus of what we're trying to do is understand how to manage the green, because we think that's where we'll live. So the majority of what we're going to give you on the 14th deals with the green. What happens if with student transportation? What happens with school nutrition? What happens with mitigation strategies if we're in school but we know someone tested positive? What's going to happen? So that's really where we're focused. You're right, partially correct in that the yellow is maybe a little middle ground, but the red is certainly not. We think by that point, you know, other factors would be other people, health department, state health department, CDC, other people would be involved with that decision at that point. So
Another
from that
thing
point.
that believe it or not, the most questions I got during this whole thing, they were more worried about sports than anything. I think another thing you're gonna find is these parents are sick of having these kids at home. They're not gonna like it if you start sending them home. So I think you're gonna have some issues there. They want them in school and they can work or do whatever. And so I think I'd put a little disclaimer on there, say, you know, this is liable to change due to circumstances beyond our control.
Right, yeah, and I think.
And something to get us kind of off the hook. But also if there's a way to say, if it read we're gonna have no sports, go ahead and put it on there.
Yeah.
So they know it's coming and
So I think,
not have to deal with it then.
yeah, let me tell you something. You're going to deal with that either way. It's just like any plan you put out, it's not going to be right.
Yeah.
So, and it's just like the mask discussion. The mask discussion, you're going to, if you don't say it's recommended but not required, you got two problems. Number one, it becomes a discipline issue if you require it and they don't wear it. Number two, I'm not so sure legally we can require them to wear them.
Really?
No, sir. I think you'd lose that before you got in the door of court. You cannot force them to wear the mask in a public entity. You can if you're a private business, but I do not believe that if they're asymptomatic, you can require them to wear it. Now, that is my legal opinion. Now, I could be wrong. I think some universities are going to require it. Some universities may require it that are publicly funded, that are saying you have to wear it in a classroom, or where we consider that to be close contact
Right.
spaces, but not in open, outside and open areas and that kind of thing.
Of course,
Yep.
there are ways to handle that if you put the ones without masks 6 feet apart back at the back of the classroom and you put the others where they can get a little closer. From what I understand, the doctor tells me that helps that safety zone from 6 feet in is what the mask is really dealing with. And he said, if you stay 6 feet apart from people, that you're not likely to get it anyway.
Well, and that's why we put in here, if you look, we use close contact.
Mhm.
Because we know that that's going to be where the research specifies that your chances go up dramatically if you're around someone that's a carrier when you're close for more than 15 minutes at a time. So that's why we think that that's really more specific to classrooms.
Should we put flat, no close? A kid does not think to me in terms of reality. Close contact may mean you don't kiss them or hug them, but that doesn't mean they're not slapping each other on the back and touching, and that's going to be a nightmare for the teachers. And I don't know any way we can handle it, and
Well, I think a lot of what we've learned since this began is that everyone has to take some personal responsibility. And so, we're not going to mandate that, because you can't mandate that.
No,
And we're
I'm
not
not
going to
saying
discipline that.
mandated, but
So my point is, I think if you read this that I gave you, we're going to stress on reentry, and especially with students that have the maturity to know, obviously what's going on. And I think that's probably even as low as kindergarten and first grade. They understand what's happening. We're going to make sure that the social distancing norms and things that they can do, we're going to try to reinforce and do. But you're right that there will be times when they're not practiced, probably, and that will be a decision that somebody makes that we probably disagree with, and may try to reinforce the correct way to do it. But we're dealing with 30,000 students that are all going to be moving around, and it's going to happen.
thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Mr. Duncan?
Just like to make sure that we consider one number, and I think it's actually included in the term active cases, and that's the recovery number. Because a lot of numbers that get used don't include the portion that has recovered. They're just focusing on the total number. So I just want to bring that to the table as a point. And the other thing is I agree that we cannot mandate and make people do things unless the state health department mandates it. And they carry enough weight that they can make us all do things we don't want to do if we want to attend, certain things, certain schools and work and things of that nature. So.
And I think too that I think we have to be fair to ourselves, and I think this is an important thing as we start talking really granular things that we're thinking about having to manage or trying to manage and teach or reteach and all types of things that are new. We have to, I think, all be kind enough to ourselves to realize that this is a pandemic, and we're doing a lot of things different for the first time. So we can become so granular and hard on ourselves that you know what I mean, that we kind of lose sight of trying to achieve the larger goals. So I always try to remind myself of that.
In looking at what Ms. Brown was commenting about the masks, I think we need to take into consideration the emotional aspect of the students. I had a parent contact me and tell me that her 13-year-old son was in a group of students, and his mother was wanting him to wear a mask, but none of the other students were, and he absolutely was not going to because they would bully him. And so she found him in his room crying his eyes out because he was torn between being bullied with these other students or the possibility that he's going to bring something to his parents that's going to kill them. That's the level of emotional interpretation of this whole thing that a lot of these students are having to deal with. So as far as mandating masks, I don't think students are going to wear masks unless they're made to, because there is that, unfortunately, masks have become a political issue, and that will carry over into the schools.
No doubt. Yeah, and we know that. We had a discussion today about the political issues of the mask and where that lands, and we'll be kind of in the middle of that. I think you're right in the aspect that you're going to have to manage, and we have a team that specifically is dealing with this, and the culture of reentry in trying to make sure, number one, we've had students that, the first week of school or so every year in a normal year is a little bit of kind of re-emphasizing school and culture and what we're doing here and those kind of things, but now we've had 4 or 5 months now that we're going to have been away from each other. So that whole process of getting, re-engaged with what the school rules are and what we're doing, part of that I think will be spent around a new aspect of culture that deals with it's okay if you wear a mask if you don't, those kind of things. We'll have to have very specific conversations about that. And so we have some professional training set up already through that team for teachers when they come back, specifically around that, how to re-engage culture and how to build that platform that it's okay to do those things. So we're trying to look into that, but that's very, very factual and very true. Thank you. That's good. Mr. Daniels?
Yeah, well, first, thank you for sharing the plan, this high-level view with us, because I think it starts to answer some of the questions, at least for the community to have a basic understanding of what are some of the things that we're considering at this point. I've got a lot of other questions related to, how do you keep kids, spread apart, especially in middle school and high school when you've got, students moving from one end of the building to the other, but I can wait on those until we get into July when I think you'll have more detail to share with us. But I do think based on some of the discussion, the masks, the bullying, some of that, I think there'll be a lot of onus on our administration and staff to kind of set the expectation in their classrooms and their schools.
Yeah.
of there are going to be people here, first day of school, there are going to be people here in masks, there's going to be people here maybe not. It doesn't mean that one's right and one's wrong. It's just that's what we're going to have to deal with. It doesn't mean that one person's bad or one's not bad, or it's all right to make fun of them because of the choice they make, whether it be their choice or their parents. And I think if our staff set the example and set that expectation and work through those different scenarios, I think that's where everything's going to start. I also think that it wouldn't be smart enough to sit here and think that we're going to go through a whole year without a case impacting a student in our school or a parent of a student or a teacher or staff in our school. It's the odds are it's going to happen, and probably sooner rather than later. And so the discussion that you've already mentioned we're going to have about how we plan for that and how we handle that, I think is important as well. But I also think I've had parents call me and say, I'm concerned. I don't even want to send my student back, and I've got questions about how are we going to handle those situations. If we've got a student that says I'm just not going back, do they go through the homeschool track? What if they don't want to go through something like that? But I know those are things that you all are all talking about and considering. But at the end of the day, for me, a lot of it comes down to trust. In the school and the staff. And I know Mr. Taylor sitting in the back right there, but I absolutely 100% with my 3 kids at Union Elementary believe that he and his school are going to do every single thing they can to keep those kids safe. Whether it's modifying the schedule to limit the number of students in the hallway at certain times, moving back and forth to different related arts classes, library, lunch, and those other things. I have 100% faith that he's going to do everything that he can to address that and look out for my kid and the other kids in the school. And I think that's where, as parents, we've got to be able to have that trust in our staff. And I think most parents do. I think most of us up here that have kids in the school or grandkids in the school have that faith in our staff. And I think that's where it's really going to start.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. And I do too. We have a phenomenal team across this county. And so when we talk about, hey, here are some considerations and framework for you to think through about what you're going to do for movement of students and within the building and using the cafeteria or not using the, those kind of things that we're going to work through. Every building's going to look a little different because of size and structure. And so even though they'll have some common themes, they won't all exactly have the same granular detail about how they're going to make that work. But I have faith, 100% confidence and faith, just like you mentioned, in our principals and our leadership team, and they're going to do what's best for students. I think one thing that when we survey parents, we'll probably try to get the best information we can, obviously, at that time, which will be here in a couple of weeks, will be about whether they feel comfortable to send their child back to school. One of the things there, Andy, is just to give us some kind of idea. Of course, we're going to be staffed for everyone to be there. But it'll give us a little bit of idea about how to make some modifications for those parents to reach out to their principal and not have to choose that the homeschool track. They can stay enrolled and we can do some online things for them so they can stay engaged until they feel comfortable coming back. When will that be? I don't know, because it'll be a different decision for every family. But we'll just have to work through that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Daniels. Ms. Hayes?
Yes, thank you, Chairman Brewer. At the top of each of those, the green, the yellow, and the red, the percentage, is that across the board, CDC, statewide, those percentages? Are other school districts following that same, those percentages, where they come from?
Yeah. So we've seen that everyone that's had a marker has kind of used those same guidelines.
Okay.
If they're trying to separate it into what we're going to do as far as big boxes. But I don't know, Norma, do you know? I don't know that that's a CDC number or not. I don't think it is.
Have they made suggestions for public school and how those percentages and within that range, and then you need to go to a...
CDC has made some recommendations, and several other counties are using this criteria here.
And they're conservative numbers, it
Yes.
seems.
Yes, they are.
Very conservative numbers.
Right. And the number at the bottom, the active cases, that's on a 21-day average. So we're working with the health department to get that number, so we can update that on a
Gotcha.
daily basis.
They
So
give it out
we'll be
every day.
continuing to update that percentage.
So when we start school, that will be an information,
We'll
I
always,
think you
it
can
will
get it
be
any time.
changing, yes, on a daily basis.
Okay.
And parents can access that through the local health department
Yes,
and
I
the state
think you can check.
without having to contact us or the school and say, do you have a case today? We want to try to give them a source that we can kind of go by. You also have to realize too that in that green box, when you see what we're going to do, it's going to be it's not necessarily that we believe we'll start school and we'll have 0 cases, right?
Right.
We're going to start school, and within the first week,
Mm-hmm.
we're going to have one. So within that green box on July 14th, you'll see our plan as a district for what happens once we know that occurs.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think the difference in now versus March, and this is not just for us, but across the country, we didn't have because we were dealing with something that was very new and unknown, and medical experts really didn't know how to address the issue medically from the spread situation.
Mm-hmm.
So we were all thinking in two actual boxes, in school or out of school, right? Whether you have a case, you don't have a case, and we're gonna have to be much more granular in that green box to say, if someone tests positive, but you didn't have close contact with them, then maybe just deep clean their particular workspace and not have access to that for 2 days for other students. But if you're asymptomatic, you're probably okay. You see what I mean? There's gonna be a lot of that kind of granular detail with the green box that prior to now, we really weren't dealing with it that way. We were dealing with it with kind of a not really knowing what to do.
Right.
From a medical perspective, and then obviously the state stepping in and just shutting down schools everywhere, entire schools.
Question. While we're on this topic, so you have Joe, who is in kindergarten, and he tested positive. So for privacy reasons, the release of that child's name,
Give that to you July 14th.
you're gonna give us that all in detail?
Yeah.
But no reason to close the whole school down? Right.
Don't think so.
Okay, and you all may be a little bit more knowledgeable about this legislation in the short session. So public schools will be protected from lawsuits because of a child being in, it came through our TSBA. There was a lawsuit, I guess there'll be a law in covering doctor's offices and public schools, I knew public schools were in there, that we would not, now, somebody could file a lawsuit because they just want to file a lawsuit,
Yeah.
but we would have protection.
That's my understanding.
Yes. Okay. Make sure I understood that wrong. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Ms. Hayes. Ms. Brown?
I want to know, are we requiring, I just assumed we are, but I'm beginning to think, no. Are we requiring all of our staff and all of our teachers to wear masks?
No,
See, to
we
me
haven't.
as a parent, I'd rather know that than all this
Yeah.
other stuff, what happens when the problem comes.
Yeah.
I want to know what my child is walking into.
Sure. We're not, as it stands today, we have not specified that we're requiring employees to wear masks.
Now, see, to me, that's very important to me as a parent. Of course, I'm not a parent of a child, but I've got one grandchild, will be a senior, then I'm finished. But I think it needs to have more of what the parent is to expect when they go in that school. And like, they will not be wearing masks. Well, then you certainly can't ask the children to at any stage, if you're not gonna ask your own
Sure.
people.
And I think if you'll just hold on to the meeting in July, you'll get all that, or at least what we're proposing. It's gonna be very, very, very detailed
Thank you,
for
Ms.
all
Brown.
of those
Mr. Wise?
areas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I sit here listening to comments and questions and so forth, first off, thank you, Dr. Phillips, you and your team for putting together this information. Thank you for your concern for our children. Thank you for your concern that parents are getting information now. But as I was sitting here listening, Mr. Daniels hit the nail on the head with one big word, and that's the word trust. My message to parents and the general public would be, have confidence in your school leadership. Including this board, I see parents of students. I have grandchildren, and they're the best ones in the whole wide world. So you better take care of them on this board.
We voted on
We
that.
have grandparents of school students. This school system, the leadership of this school system is not out to do harm to your child. we will, including this board, we will do everything possible to keep your child safe while attempting as best as possible to accomplish the mission that we first heard in that first slide. If we do that, we will have been successful. However, do not expect a perfect score. Don't let it be one of my grandchildren, but somebody's gonna be mishandled. I'm just kidding with that. Somebody's gonna be some situation is gonna be mishandled. Please forgive us in advance for that. But this school system and the leadership of this school system loves your children. I've seen it, I've seen it, I've seen it. And I know it. And I have confidence that's a fact. Let's have school. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wise. Mr. Gregory?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a nephew who works in the Army Hospital in North Carolina. And his message as of like 3 days ago, it's not going away. But there's a good thing here. If you wash your hands, keep our distance, and wear a mask. And he had a little influence on me. He said, we got, a pretty good chance of winning until the vaccine comes. And he's optimistic that it's gonna come sooner than, I told Dr. Phillips about him, my nephew, and he said it must have been from my wife's side. And it was. But, of course, we're all proud of him. He's gone through medical school and made that commitment of volunteering for the Army in order to pay his cost. I mean, you stay in the Army as many years as you were in school. Is that the way it is or something? But he's in, what is that, Fort Benning?
I thought it was Fort Bragg.
Fort Bragg. I got a B right, that's for Fort Bragg. Fayetteville.
I think he gave you, from what I've, the folks that in the medical world that I've talked to, I think he gave you some good advice. If you practice social distancing and you wear a mask, you wash your hands a lot, you don't touch your face.
My water bill's going up.
You got a really good chance. But all of those things I kind of mentioned. I think when I was answering Ms. Hawkins, we're going to try to embed in the document that we give you guys that we release to parents after July 14th. A lot of that information, those types of links where they can go and read those things, and maybe they've seen those things and maybe they haven't, but it'll be good for us to provide that information for them.
You have gone over all this with principals, I'm sure, or have you?
Absolutely. We're going to talk to principals tomorrow just about this portion, and then of course many of them are already on teams, whether they're talking about the culture and social and emotional health of students and staff, the instruction side, but we're going to pull a group together to just talk about the nuts and bolts of what each school needs to consider once we say these are the things that we need to address. Because every school, like I mentioned before, every school is different. Different number of students, different spaces, different ways they have arrival and dismissal, and so to get real specificity, it's going to have to be down to, for some things, it's going to have to be down to the specific school and classroom level.
Ms. Andrews?
Yeah, I just want to echo to what Mr. Daniel said, that we've got great teachers and great faculty and principals and so forth, and I feel like, that when they go in on the first day of school, the tone's gonna be set. They're gonna say what expectations are. I feel like they're gonna be very clear on just what you have to do with lots of things, in a classroom, as far as saying, there are, people that have different views all the time, regardless whether we have COVID or not, and this is how we're gonna do this. We're gonna show love to everybody, and we're gonna treat everybody as our neighbor, and so forth. And I think the teachers and our principals will do that, and I think they will do that effectively. My question is, a couple of questions. One is, any of the information that we have seen tonight, will any of that information be going out prior to the July meeting, just so parents kind of already know that we're having that? Or are we waiting completely until July?
We're planning to release this tomorrow after I visit with the principals.
Okay. And then my other question is, on those percentages, I understand that that information comes, from the health departments and so forth, but is that kind of, say for instance, that those percentages are putting us into the yellow category, but that's because our jail is tested positive and we have a couple of nursing homes. Obviously, those two things are not affecting our students. Is there any leeway, and that may, again, come in July, and I totally understand, but is there any leeway within that to say, okay, yes, we understand that for the county our percentages are here, but this is why, and we don't need to disrupt everybody's life because of this isolated group of citizens?
I think that's a good consideration. I think that's hard for us to track, and then it's a decision that's made granular every day with the new cases. Does that make sense? So they can get very tough and confusing for parents pretty fast. So one, I think that would be tough to do just from a management standpoint, and a little bit confusing. Two, I think if we get in a situation where within our county we're getting close to that yellow number, there's going to be a lot of conversations, and it probably wouldn't be a one, that number would be high enough, it wouldn't be one nursing home or the jail pod or something of that nature. It would be spread more across the community. Does that make sense? Multiple communities to get that number.
And then,
So it would be a bigger concern than just one
Okay.
isolated incident, I believe.
okay. And then last question is, just from the previous information that we had, like say back in March and so forth, with that information, do we have any idea of where that would have fallen on that green, yellow, red?
Yep, so
Look on
what,
it.
what we had in Sumner County, we would, from March forward, we would have always been in the green.
Okay.
We would have never gotten close to the yellow. So far.
I think that's good, just information too, because
Yeah.
I think some people will have assumptions of,
Yeah.
because school's closed,
And
but we already we're at that.
Yeah, and I think, I'm sorry that I didn't specify that earlier, because that might have helped you with your thought process when I talked about the specifics that'll be in the green box. When I said that'll be 90% of it, because if you realize that you're gonna live in the green box, then as a parent, I wanna know what's gonna happen if my school has a positive case, whether that's a student or an employee, a staff member. And that's where the rubber meets the road with July 14th, when we present those things. They're gonna be concerned about support, reentry for other things like the social, emotional health, the student support, the support for, mask, no mask, those kind of things. But they're really gonna be looking at what happens when I get the information. How am I gonna get the information that there's a positive case, and what are you gonna do when that happens? We believe that's what they'll be focused on
And
as
the-
parents, which is what they should be focused on.
And as a parent, I would say my last statement would be that as discussions are happening and so forth, and especially as we look at the possibility, if we were to get into, say, the yellow section and so forth, and we're having to really do some modifications and maybe looking at different schedule changes and so forth, that we will remember that we have parents that have children in multiple schools
Yep.
across multiple grades, myself included, having kids in 3 different schools. Just thinking through clusters, I've hearing what some other districts have talked about and stuff, and doing an AB schedule, I would have to probably have my own Google Calendar just for the AB schedule for
Yeah.
all my kids.
Yeah.
That's just and so just to think through, okay,
And that, honestly, that's why, especially in some larger systems where you have feeder patterns and you have families with students in three different, elementary, middle, and high, they're all in the same feeder pattern. When one gets in close contact and exposed, and what does that do to the other two? You see what I'm saying? I mean, when you start thinking all that through, then yeah, it's a lot of moving pieces that all have some interaction that may not be at school. Does that make sense? So, long story short, some of the larger systems have said, well, we're not going to do like an A/B modified. We would rather do in or out, or something different than that because of that reason, feeder pattern reason.
Thank you, Ms. Andrews.
I'll just have one comment.
All right, Bob.
And first of all, I want to thank you, Dr. Phillips, for briefing us on this today. This puts a lot of things not to rest, but at least gives us something to think about and realize that this is being worked on, and that it will be released to the parents. So the parents will have something to go by as well. Heard a lot of comments, a lot of good questions, and a lot of conversation about what we've been through the last, 4 or 5 months, and what we may have to look forward in the future. Right. But I'm so hoping that we will be able to go on and continue with school in the fall if we can. But next month, we'll be glad. We'll be all glad to see what the nitty gritty is,
yeah.
and to see where we are at that time. And I know my grandkids are ready to go back to school, and I'm ready for them to go. And I've got the best ones. I'm sorry.
A lot of them are. Yeah.
But thank you so much, Dr. Phillips, and for all of your staff for doing all this work.
Yeah,
It's been
they're a tremendous
quite
group.
an undertaking.
Yeah, they do a great job.
Thank you, Ms. Bachman. Ms. Brown.
I have misheard something. What is it you said you're gonna release this next week?
So after I go over this with principals, then we're going to talk to them about kind of the 3 parts that we've talked about, depending on the infection rate and the spread. But we're going to release more detail in July, but that'll be after the board meeting, July 14th.
So nothing's being released until mid-July?
More detail than this, right?
Right. Oh, more detail. But this is going out after you talk to the principals?
Yes.
So which will be in a week or so?
Tomorrow afternoon.
Tomorrow afternoon, okay. Because to me, why are we discussing it if this is what it's gonna be? Why are we discussing it? You said we had to have a board meeting to discuss it. I mean, other than getting info, which printed out, we could get the info. If we're not gonna change anything and this is done, then and I'm not trying to be ugly or adversarial.
Sure.
But if we can't add anything or change anything, just give it to me and I'll, decide.
Well, I mean, we're more than happy to take input. We're trying to make sure that we have input from the staff of what's manageable and not manageable based on the campuses. And if you have some suggestions, we've got to take them.
Thank you. Bottom line is, we only have so much control over what they're doing at school. When they leave school, they're still out playing street ball. They're still out running up and down the road and the alleys. I mean, they're not social distancing. And just because somebody comes up with COVID doesn't mean they got it at school. And we can only do so much.
Thank you, Mr. Wilker. Ms. Hayes.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Well, I value the study session in July and being present and receiving this more detailed information. Question on that, in the July board meeting, the voting meeting, do we vote on whether this is something we're going to implement?
I wouldn't think so.
Well, I still appreciate being a part of the study session and knowing the details, because you know who's going to get the phone calls and the emails. So I want to know it and I want to understand it very well, so that I'm able to communicate that to my constituents. So I think that's valuable.
And we'll be glad to have more than one meeting if you would like.
Are we going to eat?
Maybe. If that'll get you, yeah, if that'll get you here, we may. I think from Ms. Brown's perspective, you know, we're trying to do, I think that's kind of a two-way street. If you have suggestions that we don't feel like can be implemented or done effectively, then, you know, that's what we've got to say. But obviously, if you have suggestions that you would like us to consider that we haven't maybe even thought of, please send them our way. We want that information. We try to read as much as we can about how other districts are managing the same situation. We try to be thoughtful about the differences in our schools and things that we're going to have to navigate just within Sumner County. But we're always open, as I mentioned, to suggestions, and we will meet as many times as you guys want to meet to talk about the plan. Because at the end of the day, we want to get it right. And if you have a good suggestion or information, or we want to have a discussion that maybe internally we've had a bunch of times, but you might bring a different perspective to it. So we don't have any issue with doing that. I do not think that I would put the board in a position to vote on a plan that's going to be administrative and how we deal with it. But obviously, having you guys comfortable with the plan is the whole intent. So we'll meet as many times as you want to meet. You just have to let us know. Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Hawkins?
I was looking through the email sent to the board from Ben Torres, the Assistant Executive Director and General Counsel, and I think that's what you were referencing. And I'll just read one of the paragraphs of his recommendation. As the boards and directors of schools should work together on a reopening plan. Due to the circumstances, the plan may conflict with current board policies and decisions regarding things such as the school calendar, school day, instructional program, and employees. We strongly urge the director to seek board approval of the plan to ensure that the board is aware of and approves any conflict with current board policies. Once the plan has been approved by the board, the district should communicate its next steps to parents, employees, students, and other community stakeholders. So I interpreted that to mean that we are going to, as a board, be involved in the approval of the reopening plan.
Yeah, and I think that's like most things, you know, they probably have, every school district is probably going to handle it a different way. It does not matter to me if it's approved or you know, obviously we want it approved because that's what we're going to do. But the input that comes, we want to have as much input as possible. So it's not a problem for me if the board approves it or they don't approve it. Well, I say don't approve it. If you choose to approve it, we can have it as an agenda item and you approve it. But that function is not what I'm focused on. I'm focused on making sure that the plan is good and that we can deliver it with a high rate of success across the county. So parents have confidence and faith that we're doing everything we can to try to have school and to deliver the best education possible within the ramifications of a pandemic. That's what we're trying to do. And I think we summarized that in our goal statement pretty well. So whether you choose to do that approval process or not, really it's just a board function for us.
All right, thank you. I'll end that conversation with, well, no, Mr. Gregory. Okay. I'll end the conversation with this, and I kind of agree with what Mr. Wise said a minute ago. We got the best in the business in here. This school district is second to none, and it's because of the leadership that's here, and I trust them to put the plan in place, and they do it every day. I don't. I sell real estate. Y'all want to buy a house? Let me know. But as far don't call Ted, call me. But as far as running this school district, I think these guys know what they're doing, and I think it's great that they're opening up to, you know, if we have input that we can give to them. We've got things that we would like, you know, to get to. They're going to sit in that war room up there and they're going to beat it out. I've never called up here and didn't get an answer. These guys know what they're doing. So as far as voting on it as a board, I don't think that's something we ought to get into. That's an administrative job. They're the ones that's got to implement it. And so I'll end it with that. And we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is new business, discussion interaction regarding I'm sorry. Oh, well, it's not on here.
Yep.
Oh, so.
Oh, it's part of my director's report.
Oh, it's okay, okay, yeah, it's not, I thought you told me it was there, but,
Reentry plan.
okay.
Bad news about BEP, and good news, Scott and, our newest team member that's helping us with our Sumner Connect and, content online. This has, so Scott, you wanna take it?
Sure. JJ almost had a glorious moment. Mr. Brewer, he thought he was going to roll on through my presentation. He was. JJ just had the, victory yanked right out of the jaws. Now I want to start. One of the first things I want to say is the work that gets done on these projects when we put them together. It's really as tough as COVID has been and everything that we've endured the last few months and our families have endured, it's one of the real positives has been seeing everybody work together, because we've always had strong leadership and strong teams, but it's really unified us, and we've worked across departments in ways we never have before. And it's really been, just to give you an idea, we got the application for the CARES Act about a week and a half ago. And in less than a week, we put that whole thing together, and it required a lot of time sitting around rooms, working together. My team, Norma's team, Katie Brown's team, a couple of others, and then Amanda and her team worked tirelessly to get everything on the agenda tonight. I mean, Chris Harrison, if I disappear tonight, Chris Harrison may be responsible. But we just have exemplary people, and it's hard to imagine. It's hard for people to imagine the scale of what we did with 49 buildings and 30,000 students. But it's remarkable to get to come to work every day with the folks that do this so well, and it's a joy. Yeah, thank you, Andy. I left out Andy. But no, what we wanted to talk about tonight, we've laid out a lot. What Dr. Phillips laid out is our response, on so many fronts to make sure our students are safe. When we started back in the spring, our two core values were curriculum and caring about our kids and our staff. And so you've heard a lot about that. We wanted to kind of give you an update. I know Mr. Duncan and Mr. Wilkerson asked back, gosh, I don't know how y'all feel, but a day or a week sometimes feels like a year. I think it was 2 months ago that y'all asked for us to look at all of our data and do kind of an after-action review, and we have done that. We've rolled it into how we're moving forward with Sumner Connect. It's funny. I think as we look at all this, I saw this quote last summer when we were in the Boston airport, and it stuck with me on a number of things. And interestingly, I started the slide deck last week, and then our sermon this week included this slide in it, and it reminded me of this great quote. It's, "We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard." None of us wanted a pandemic. None of us wanted to deal with the things that we've had to deal with, but it's here, and we're going to win, and we're going to do it together, not because it's easy, but because it's hard, and we're going to come out the other side as a county stronger and more united, and our school system absolutely, and I believe that wholeheartedly. We came up with looking over everything. I'll give you kind of a 30,000-foot view of presentation, and then we'll go through some of the specifics. A lot of language about how you address the last 9 weeks of school that we lost. A lot of school districts around the country, we're going to be different, but I think we're going to be better. A lot of school districts are going to try to go back and catch that last 9 weeks of material and put it in the first 9 weeks. And all they're going to do is put themselves another quarter behind. You can't, all the research from teacher strikes in other countries that lasted weeks, natural disasters, Katrina, what they show is going back and try to remediate, you put your kids further behind. What you have to do is go ahead to the grade level that they're on, accelerate that learning, and then use targeted, timely interventions. Figure out where the kids are behind, what they're missing, and if you're teaching fractions, then if there's something from 4th grade that they missed, you teach that then. So you'll see this year, it's going to take us a little while because we're going to have to go back and catch some things from previous years and teach it then. But doing it timely is important so it's in the right context, not doing a whole bunch of worksheets at the start of the year. It's the easiest thing to do, and a lot of school districts will follow that path, but we're not going to do that because You know, I think we have the highest expectations for our students, and we want the best for them. Our teachers working with our students is our highest priority and commitment. Technology is a tool, not a teacher. Consistent feedback was how much our kids miss their teachers. And nothing can replace the relationship with the teacher. Ms. Brown and I were talking before, that greeting when a kid walks in a classroom between a teacher and a student is special and important. And you can't replace it. You know, Jean will be up here in a minute. She's going to talk like she managed to do this with her kids every day on Zoom. You know, even to the point that after she accepted the job up here, they got together and talked. You know, that's a special thing that will never be replaced. So, but we've got to make sure that we are able to deliver that connection between classroom teacher and kid. And we don't want, you know, she'll talk, I don't want to steal her thunder. We've got some specific things that we're hoping for, which is including kids not being in front of a screen. Our kids are already in front of screens too much. You know, we're going to invest not just in tech, we're going to use technology as a tool for us to be able to teach our kids with some of the things that we've invested in the last 2 years that Jean will talk about. Constant feedback from students, parents, teachers, and principals. I'm amused a little bit because I've gotten some feedback like, why are we not doing all these surveys in the summer that a lot of other districts are doing? It's because we did it from April, you know, March, April, May. We collected a massive amount of data. And we've worked through it now. We've got some great insight. But we've got a ton of feedback from students, parents, teachers, and principals. And the last thing is simplicity. If you're going to manage this at scale, you have to keep it as simple as possible. It's something that we have to say to ourselves every day because it's so easy to start adding things because they're cool. I get at least 15 emails a day from vendors with new tech products that we can use in our classrooms. And many of them are cool. But the problem is every time you try to add one of those, you got to think about how you're going to train 2,200 teachers and how you're going to teach parents how to use it and how you're going to teach kids how to use it. So we've got to get some base products and implement them really well. And that's kind of where our focus is. Okay, how we gathered feedback from parents. You've heard us talk about the POSIT pulse checks. We gave each Friday from April 10th to May 22nd, we sent out a text or email survey to our families to get their input on if they were satisfied with our school performance that week. And then usually we had an optional question. Usually it asked, how are you in terms of food, medicine, technology? And so we had, it's really 13,908 families responded over that time. Our response rate's really high. Most districts are under 30%. Our lowest participating school was over 30%. What I find really powerful is 45% of our English-speaking families responded and 57% of our non-English-speaking families responded. POSIT's able to send out the survey in like 90 or 100 languages, so they were able to get the survey to the parents in the language that they spoke at home. And that, I mean, we struggle to get non-English speaking parents to participate when we try to do things at school. This has been really powerful for us. 86.3% responded that Sumner County met their students' needs. Most districts were in the 60s. So really a testament to what our teachers and principals did. But that's how we gathered feedback from our parents. What we learned, POSIT gathers the data and then they break down for us some recurring themes that they saw in the parent data. So teachers, parents were very appreciative of the communication and efforts from teachers. They appreciated district-wide communications. They appreciated the effort made to recognize students for their hard work. If you followed on Twitter and social media, Facebook, you saw that our schools did, I mean, virtual honors days, drive-through honors days, countywide virtual art show. They really, like, every time we would hit an obstacle, our teachers would find new ways to honor and create moments and memories for our kids in the weirdness that we had this spring. And parents really appreciated it. And parents were very appreciative of the efforts to get food and technology to those in need. You know, Andy's team, they did an amazing job. Andy and Amanda's team did an amazing job with the grab-and-go lunches. I mean, I would guess we're well over 500,000 meals that we've served at this point. Yeah, so that's pretty remarkable. What do parents want for 2020, 2021? Clear communication, prompt and thorough communication from the district as future plans are updated. More consistent expectations and feedback from schools. You know, this is very fair because we couldn't do grades. And I don't know about you, but when I was in high school, if I'm being completely truthful, I would have known exactly what I had to do to get an A, and that's what I would have done unless it was something I really enjoyed. I would have done history and English. But if I'd had a 93 in math when we rolled out to closure, there is not a chance I would have done Algebra 2. I'll be totally honest. But what our parents asked for is for our kids to have the clear expectations that we have when we're in the building, have those when we're doing distance learning, remote learning, and that's very fair. Student preparation, we had a lot of it showed up on our POSSIP surveys, it showed up on comments when we did Facebook Live. A lot of concern of parents that their kids are ready for the next grade. The reality is our kids are going to have holes in their learning. Every kid in the United States, at one point, 90% of the students in the world were not in school. There are going to be holes in learning, but that's okay. We're going to have a plan to address that. And then have questions and ideas about the district plans for the coming school year. All very good feedback. I think it's always good when we do these presentations to see some of our kids. And these are all what our teachers shared on Twitter and Facebook. Okay, how we gathered feedback from our teachers. We did 5 teacher surveys between April 6th and May 22nd. At a certain point, we surveyed everybody so much that we were getting a little survey weary. So we dropped one and did a big comprehensive one at the end. You know, we had some teachers that commented on like the 4th one that we did, like, I've told you everything I can tell you. There's nothing new this week. So we decided it was time to take a week off and we'd come back and catch the next one. We had surveys gave the teachers the opportunity to share feedback on online instruction, their concerns and their suggestions for improvement. You know, one of the things we decided early on is that we were going to be Google and not Apple. You know, when you get an iPhone, it's finished, it's beautiful, it works perfectly, you know, very few errors. You don't get that very often. A lot of times you get Google, you get the best product out there you can, and then you get feedback and you fix things as quickly as you can. And our teachers were wonderful. We usually had close to 50%, 45–50% of our teachers respond to each of our surveys. And they were able to give us really detailed feedback that we could then fix in our next week instructional plans. We had the teacher surveys were collected by Jeff Yawn's team, and they, the group of lead educators and Jeff, and they would go through each week, and they would, by Monday, they could close out on Friday. By Monday, they'd give me talking points for our Monday memo that we did that had the details of what came out of the teacher feedback. They just finished about a week ago, because the last one was a lot of narratives, so there was a lot to work through. Just fantastic data from our teachers, and it just gives you the insight into how wonderful our teachers are and how thoughtful and reflective they are. What did we learn from our teachers? Uniform platforms. Our teachers and parents had to navigate multiple platforms for assignments and communication. A lot of parent feedback beyond just POSSIP came to us from our teachers because our teachers were reaching out to our kids each week. We reached, you know, it's funny, the state's bending over backwards trying to figure out how many kids got contacted. We reached all but, like, nor was it 89 of our 30,000 students. I mean, that's remarkable. And that's because our teachers and principals got after it to contact everybody. And one of the things that we heard from teachers and then from parents talking, and it showed up in our POSSIP, is I've got 3 kids at 3 different schools. We're using a lot of platforms. We're using Remind. We're using, you know, I got 45 emails. I got a whole bunch of, you know, it's hard to manage. So we've got to get uniform platforms. Simple, simple, simple. Teacher-driven lessons. Teachers want to, you know, they understood that we had to do what we had to do in the spring, but moving forward, they want to be able to teach their kids the lessons and have their fingerprints on what they're teaching. Student accountability. Students need clear guidance and understanding that assignments count for grades. Yes. Training on how to use technology tools for teachers, students, and parents. We rolled fast in the spring. As we move forward, it'll be embedded from the start. You know, Google Classroom, some of the things that Gina will talk about in just a second. We've got to train everybody on how to use these tools. Okay, building Sumner Connect for 2020, 2021 and beyond. One of the most important things we did is, you know, we're very lean here. You know, if you look at a lot of other districts, they're very heavy, very top heavy in the central office. One of the things that makes us able to respond to crises like we did is because we all work together, because we're pretty lean and we're efficient. But it's, you know, what's really helpful is when you see all these gaps and holes and needs, is when you can get someone that can give their full attention to pulling everything together. We have so many of these resources that we're going to utilize for Sumner Connect this year. They're already here. They're in place. We just got to get them all tied together. And what I'm really excited about, I'm a little nervous to say some of this because Lance is in the back of the room, and I'm still kind of halfway concerned that Lance might just be here to. If Chris Harrison doesn't get me, the next culprit is right back there in the back of the room, because Jean was just a rock star third grade teacher, and I got her in a little trouble with the fire marshal at the start of the year because I put up pictures of her classroom when she created an entire ocean in her classroom. Evidently, the fire marshal doesn't like things stuck to the ceiling. Sorry, Jean, I shouldn't have put it on Facebook. It's funny, it hit Gallatin and somebody ratted us out to the fire marshal. But Jean's also the one, you've heard me tell the story a lot of times about the dissecting the squid with the third grade. That's Miss Essen. But, she's just what we needed was not just someone that understands technology, but someone that understands what teachers need when they're utilizing technology. And what Jean is really amazing at doing is connecting the two together. I mean, she had third graders using Google Forms to respond to what was going on in their day. Did it every day in her classroom. Continued that on distance learning. I mean, it's really remarkable what she's able to do. And y'all, she's come straight out of the classroom, and after about 10 days, you would never guess that she hasn't been here her whole life. She really is a fantastic addition to our team, and I'm going to turn it over to her and let her share some of the details of what we do.
Thank you, Mr. Langford. That was a fantastic introduction. Thank you, school board members, for allowing me to come speak tonight, and thank you, Dr. Phillips, for this opportunity. A little bit about me. I've taught in Sumner County for 15 years. I've taught third grade for all of those years. I taught 1 year at North Sumner and then 14 years at Union Elementary as a third grade teacher. I've served as a teacher leader and have held positions in various leadership roles. But perhaps I say all of that to say that to focus on one of the things that perhaps I am most proud of, and that would be, there's not this different slide. I added a slide. It would be distance learning. Distance learning, I don't know if you've ever Zoomed with 8-year-olds. It is hard. Johnny, come back, over here, we're learning, and Zooming is not easy. The effort and our district's response to distance learning during closure was impressive. We were able to not only meet the needs of their basic needs with food, but also technology and even further with instruction at a breakneck speed. We got out on Friday, and Monday we had plans the next day. It was insane. I'm really proud of that, and I've heard so much feedback from teachers that we felt supported, we felt heard, and we felt like we were able to best meet the needs of our students emotionally because we knew that the district had our back on instruction. So I was really proud of that as we shifted, and the ground was a little shaky. It's no easy task, but I'm excited because I bring the perspective of both a teacher and a parent. I'm fresh out of the classroom. I've taught through distance learning. I've taught through Wit and Wisdom with the 1.5 years. And I've also bring that perspective of a parent who's coming in, who is hearing communication from the district, both on Facebook, Twitter, Google Classroom, Remind, Dojo. So I understand the need for clarity and for simplicity moving forward as we plan for the 2020-2021 school year. A huge focus going forward will be the implementation of support of the knowledge building curriculum Wit and Wisdom. Before closure, we had over 100,000 texts purchased to support the Wit and Wisdom implementation. Now we have over 337,000, and that will be even more moving into January as we onboard 9 through 12 in our ELA curriculum. That's huge. That's huge. To have a text, not only we focus on distance learning. When we think of distance learning, we think, what computers do you have? Do you have enough computers? And as a teacher, I think, do we have enough books? Can I send these babies home with a text they can read, and then I can get on Zoom and say, I'm going to read this part to you, and I want you to read 7 through 11 on your own, and then we're going to come back and talk about it. And we can talk about that. We can do that through their cell phones. We can do that through various methods. It does not have to be the end-all of technology, although incredibly important. As a teacher, it warms my heart to see that we're going to have over 500,000 texts one-to-one for our students in K-12. That is unprecedented as a district and is wildly exciting to support students in that way. Putting these rich texts in the hands of our student and then pairing that with strong Tier 1 instruction and the appropriate supports will provide the students with the knowledge that they need both in comprehension, in vocabulary, and in writing to ensure success. If they're not strong readers, then we have an uphill battle all the way with every other subject. So I'm excited just on this page alone that we have over 500,000 texts in the hands of our students. That's something to really be applauded. We also have over 11,000 Chromebooks currently, with another 1,000 LTE equipped Chromebooks purchased. That means, for those of us not super tech savvy, that computer can access the internet here, there, and everywhere, in Bug Hollow, in Cottontown, and even in the middle of Hendersonville. So that is an exciting thing that, yeah, right? Drake's Creek, perhaps. This could maybe get out, I doubt it, but possibly. So we have 1,000 of those purchased as well. We also have 20 additional Wi-Fi antenna extenders that will be placed in buildings. So if you can't get to, if you don't have access to one of these LTE Chromebooks, perhaps you can take your own Chromebook to North Sumner parking lot and access the internet from there. The bedrock components of our Sumner Connect going forward will be a strong ELA curriculum. Wit and Wisdom K-12 is, it just kind of blows my mind slightly as a teacher that we're going to have a cohesive curriculum K-12. K-12. So if my kid comes in from any school at from 3rd grade at any school, it's going to be the same. And then if they roll into 4th grade, it's not going to be following just a scope and sequence. It's going to be a cohesive curriculum that builds from year to year, and that's big. That's big for our kids. And beyond that, we're also going to be pairing that with Wilson's Fundations. And Fundations is a foundation for literacy. So that's the foundational piece that K1 crowd has been missing, that we've been reaching for, searching for. We have it this year. So now we have a really strong Tier 1 instruction with Wit and Wisdom paired with appropriate supports for the Tier 2 and Tier 3 kiddos. And the fact that those align well is beautiful. And so I think that's going to be a great thing for our kids, a great support for our teachers, that we have a common curriculum that will build from year to year and support even if you're in Tier 1, Tier 2, or Tier 3. It's great. Like I said, one-to-one texts from K-12. Awesome. And we also have Wit and Wisdom in Sync. So the reason why this is important is as teachers build those routines and procedures in their brick and mortar classroom, we will be doing that through Wit and Wisdom, through Bridges, through other curricula as well. However, if we need to transition to distance learning, we have the opportunity to access Wit and Wisdom in Sync. What that means is that those curriculum supports that the teachers access within the classroom will now be digital. So as I leave on Tuesday and I'm in lesson 7, I can seamlessly transition into lesson 8 using Wit and Wisdom in Sync, because those particular pieces sync well with Google Classroom and can be shared to Google Classroom, and their learning can continue. That could be a great option in addressing the challenge of, what if I'm not comfortable enough to send my child? Or what if we have a medical fragile grandfather that lives with us and I can't send him for risk of exposure? We have that opportunity to flex, to say, well, we're doing unit 7 or lesson 7 here in 3rd grade, and I can put those same things, thanks to things like what Bridges, our math curriculum, is doing and what Wit and Wisdom is doing. I can push that out online and the learning can continue in the building or out of the building. That's really, I think teachers are going to be really excited about that, because they'll have that autonomy to teach those lessons to their students, but they'll also have that curriculum support as well. So it's really encouraging. Further, another bedrock component of our Sumner Connect plans going forward will be strong research-based intervention curricula. So Wilson's Fundations will be paired with Wit and Wisdom to support our students in Tier 2, Tier 3 instruction. Wilson's Language Intervention for Tier 2 and Tier 3 kids, grades 2 through 8, not leaving that middle school crowd out. Reading intervention will continue across traditional, hybrid, and remote platforms. So just because we're out of school does not mean that your intervention will no longer be provided. The expectation going forward will be that all teachers, including special ed teachers, including reading interventionists, will have a Google Classroom and will have access to video conferencing to continue those interventions with their students. That's exciting to have that support as well through the curriculum. And Teachtown will be interventions used for special education students as well. An additional bedrock component would be technology. And technology is a tool but not a teacher. We want to limit the amount of time that students spend per day on devices. As rolling out of the classroom, I can assure you that some of the reason why some of one of the reasons why some of my students showed up to my Zoom sessions was because they knew that I loved them. They knew that I was missing them, and they knew that, I don't want to get up at 10 o'clock, but Miss Hudson's going to be like, I haven't seen you in 2 days. Where you been? So I think that's something that really, that foundation of relationships, like Mr. Daniel said about trust, is what gets our kids to Zoom, and it's what gets those kids to school. And that's important. It's really important. But they can't get that through a device. So our teachers and the relationships they form are a huge asset. Training students, teachers, and parents and principals to use the platforms. So Sumner Connect, the website, was initially created to quickly communicate instructional plans to parents and teachers. And it worked. It was a great idea. It worked. It served its purpose. Going forward, we'll shift that. Sumner Connect will no longer be where you will access your lessons, because teachers will now be trained through Sumner Connect on how to implement Google Classroom and G Suite tools within their classroom. So we'll be taking away that scaffold of knowledge on the go lessons provided by the district, and we're going to supplement that or replace that with strong Tier 1 instruction so that teachers can use that Wit and Wisdom curriculum to teach using Google Classroom. So Sumner Connect going forward will be an information and training hub for parents, teachers, and students. So when a parent says, my kid's on Google Classroom, but I have no idea how to get on that platform, we can say, hey, the Sumner Connect site, tell them how. But we can also direct them to the Sumner Connect site and say there's a video tutorial there just for parents, so you can see exactly how to access your Google Classroom and how to best support your students' learning. Furthermore, as teachers, we're a huge district. I can plan really well for Union, but when I scope out and I'm thinking about all of these schools, might need, it's a whole different undertaking. So we have teachers entering at all different skill levels. We have teachers who can do amazing things with technology that absolutely are beyond me and blow my mind. And we have teachers that are still not quite there yet with their Sumner K-12 account. And we need to start supporting those teachers, or continue to support those teachers at the very basic level, so that they can accelerate their own capacity and build their own capacity in their use of technology. And we will do that through the Sumner Connect site. So we have 3 hours of training for teachers. We're building videos authentically within our district that reflect the needs of our teachers, and they will be posted on the Sumner Connect site to learn everything we can teach them through an online platform regarding G Suite tools and Google. So the expectation going forward with the support of the Sumner Connect site will be that all teachers will have Google Classroom within their buildings, within their rooms, and they will use it often. So that won't be just have a Google Classroom, moving on. We will continue to train them on that and continue to provide job embedded training so that it's seamless. So if we're there on Tuesday and we're out on Wednesday, that transition will be seamless and teachers will be able to roll with it. Leveraging technology to increase student opportunities. This is big. This is about equity. This is about your academic opportunities should not be hindered or more because of where you live. So Sumner Connect is working with other leaders within the district to create an AP pilot. We've bought video equipment to pick our best and brightest in teaching those AP courses, and allowing those to be, the details are a little muddy, and we're going to work with those out, but to allow access to more students for more AP classes. That's something that's definitely on our radar and something we're working towards solving for our students. It's about equity and about what's right. Another is working groups of supervisors, principals, coordinators, lead educators to build our instructional plan. Coming out of the classroom, seeing this in operation daily is slightly mind-blowing. Wow. What happens over there? What do they do at central office? A whole lot. A whole lot. Okay, they do a whole lot. I have grown in knowledge by leaps and bounds, and I start on July 1st. So I'm excited about that. My first day is July the 1st, so that's exciting. First is going to be culture. So those are going to be things, everything from dealing with the social emotional well-being of students from all of the things beyond COVID, all of the things that are going on in our nation right now. The election is coming up. We have an uphill battle out of the gate, and we have a culture team that's working to put boots on the ground and to make plans for teachers and administrators to handle those really sticky situations. Those are on our radar. We're very mindful of that. That was a very comforting thing to sit in on, and I have another meeting coming up this week regarding. Instruction's always digging. They're always working. Curriculum is going to be Miss Christy Wall. Leadership and intervention is Dr. Philip Holt. And then the Sumner Connect is myself. So we're going to be working on creating instructional plans that are best for all K-12 students. We're starting with Wit and Wisdom, increasing that with our Bridges math curriculum, working with things like Edgenuity and other platforms to ensure the quality of education that we hope for our students. And then Operations, Chase Moore and Jeff Yon. Those guys are incredible. Our work for the 2021 school year, accelerate learning with interventions. I think this is a really important thing. As a teacher, I know that if I had to remediate for my students or provide interventions for my students going in August, I would tread water until mid-December and lose about 2 months of instruction, because I want to make sure you know all the things before I move on to third grade. And that's not going to be best practice going forward. So if you hear from parents and other stakeholders, well, they're already starting third grade stuff and my kid missed 9 weeks of second grade or however long of second grade, please rest assured that we as an instructional team are looking at where fractions are taught, where geometry is taught. It makes no sense instructionally, in my opinion, to teach all of these things compacted at the beginning of the year because you missed second grade. It would make more sense to provide those. If they were supposed to name shapes at the end of second grade and that wasn't taught, then when you get to geometry in third grade, you'll not only name those shapes but describe them by their attributes. So you have to drop back and punt slightly within that skill or within that standard and then move forward. That's what that means. Just interventions just in time, not just in case. Not like, well, you missed it, so you must not know. Instead, when we get to that skill, we will provide those supports. That's a better use of our time. As a teacher, I know that the teachers I've taught with would tread water for months because they want to make sure they've got it all in, and we would lose so much instruction when we can piece it together in a way that makes more sense. Technology is a tool, not a teacher. That's so true. I think one of our biggest assets, like I said, are our teachers. Our hybrid or remote learning options, technology will allow teachers to instruct the students. That was reflected very much, that was a want reflected in our teacher surveys. Teachers wanted to teach. Teachers wanted to teach. And while the support of Knowledge on the Go was fantastic, and it allowed us to breathe as parents, as humans, as teachers. Moving forward and getting better, we would like to be able to provide that instruction. So that's exciting to be able to do that as well. And technology will help us achieve greater equity and accessibility for all of our students. Referring back to that AP pilot that we're going with for the K-12 crowd. I'm sorry, 9-12 crowd. Consistent feedback. All right, this was really cool. I sat in on this meeting this past week. The final meeting was a lot of short answers. It wasn't yes, no, maybe so, or always, never. It was short answers. This team, a very small amount of teachers and lead educators, sorted through, by grade band, by elementary, middle school, and high school, sorted through every single teacher's responses, including my own. My responses were in there, sorted, and were heard. So we're printing those out as an instructional. We're going to print them, look through those, and identify trends. They've already done that. That's an overwhelming number of responses that they've read, sorted by topic, and we can quickly reference according to what went well. A large majority thought Google Classroom. Communication was an issue. It was a lot of it. Not that it wasn't enough, but it was just a lot in a lot of different directions. That's okay. We can streamline that. We can make that better. It's not missing. It's just going to be even better next time. So this is really cool to hear consistent feedback through the district. I didn't answer a survey and it went into some random folder nobody looked at. Teachers are looking at it. Principals are looking at this. Leaders in the district are looking at this and shaping our approach to education based on their feedback. That's powerful. That's powerful as a teacher. I know that my voice is heard. You guys are listening. And so I've echoed that many times to my teams and people I've worked with for teaching. That's cool. So going forward, principals and teachers will be surveyed bi-weekly at the start of school and then monthly, and then like Dr. Phillips said, on 9-week quarters. So we can adjust our sales accordingly on those feedbacks and where we are as a district. Simplicity. Like Mr. Langford said, it's easy to add it all. And then this, and then this, and then this, and it's gonna be great. And then teachers are saying, huh? What? You want me to do what with what? It's just too much. So simplicity is appreciated, and I think it's going to be the most effective way to move forward. And with that, we're going to use Google Classroom, like I've said, to create one common platform where administrators, Sumner Connect leads can access and check for progress for students, making sure teachers are using it so that it's a seamless transition in and out of school. Or for students who don't feel comfortable coming to school, they still have that updated classroom to check. We will also use Remind. I wrote down the statistics. Something like 1.4 Remind messages were sent in April alone. Thank you. 1.5 million. I thought wasn't a very staggering statistic. That is much better. 1.5. What did I say? 1.5 what? 1.4 million text messages were sent to parents in the district in April alone. I got quite a few. I mean, and 26% of that was reciprocal conversation. It's not just delivering of information, but it's also a reciprocal conversation between parents and teachers. 1.4 million in April. That's huge. Teachers care. Teachers care, parents care, and they want what's best for their kids, and that statistic alone is staggering to show the communication that our teachers are digging and trying for our students. I think that's really impressive. And going forward, we have purchased Remind 101. So we'll have more options, more analytics to just kind of judge its usage going forward. G Suite Enterprise for Education, that will provide Google Classroom, that will provide Google Meet, and all of those appropriate applications within Google. And teachers will complete 3 hours of Google Classroom training this summer. That again will be housed on the Sumner Connect site, built authentically within the building to reflect the needs of our teachers, and will help support them as they transition from brick and mortar to digital and back and forth. So that is all that I have.
Where did you teach?
I taught at Union Elementary and North Sumner for a year. So I taught at Union. Yes, sir. Do you guys have any questions for me before I throw it back?
We're glad to have you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Sir?
I don't know why we missed getting you in.
Oh, I don't. I'm in Portland, right? I know. Well, I was there for a brief stint. I taught at North Sumner. They let me go.
Well, before we get into questions, I would just say that it looks like you could have looked a little bit longer and found someone that was more excited about their job. I love it when they're excited about their job, and if this job don't work out, I need an apprentice auctioneer in my company. So.
I try so hard to slow it down. Once I'm excited, it's over.
You did great. You did great. Miss Andrews.
Yeah, one, I just want to say thank you so much. This makes me really excited. As a parent, it makes me really excited for next year. I know that Scott and I have had lots of conversations, or sometimes I'd send a text, I'd, have a thought, hey, we need to do this for, parents. He's like, we're already working on it. And so, a couple of things. One, just, again, feedback from parents.
Sure.
About Remind, that I was actually going to send Scott, so that's one information I don't have to send, is, for our teachers, that when they set up their Remind, to have them actually put their name.
Yes.
Because I have, having multiple kids and stuff like that, I'll have like 6 period science. I'm like, oh, I gotta figure out which kid.
I
has
bet
6
she's
period
great. Who is
science.
she?
And so if they would put, or they stay in there year after year, and so then I know which ones I can go and delete. So if they will put their name, and then if they want to put their class specific, that's great. But as a parent, I need their name, and so I think I'm sure that's consistent across for other parents that have multiple children. And then 2, I know that it's in the works, and I'm sure Jeff is curious about it too, about the AP pilot. Is that something that we are looking at launching this year, or we're just looking at recording? And if we are looking at launching this year, what will be the process for us to, those of us who have kids in high school, to look at their schedule?
So I'll tweet Elon Musk if you need some help launching any program.
I'm a little disappointed. Jean's been here 10 days and she hasn't mastered high school curriculum yet. So, and this started before Jean. Being 16 days before she technically starts. What we're looking at this year is identifying the decision that we've got to make in the next week or so. There's just 2 ways we can go about it. We can pick
courses, so we make sure we have a base of courses at every school, like AP US History, AP English Literature, things like that. Or we go with the ones that are harder to staff. Like there are not very many AP Physics teachers out there, but we have 3 in the county. So, you know, like I think what we'll see is try to get in, this year we'll try to get 1 in each area. So a higher level math, a higher level English, a higher level science, higher level social studies. Most of our schools have, every one of our schools has AP US History. So we may, you know, do 2 some. What we want to do is not necessarily be bound by the subject matter as much this year as we are getting the right teachers that are really interested. You know, like if we had a gene to teach every subject, we'd be good to go. We'd be ready to roll. But so it's going to be like, I would say by July we'll have that kind of all spelled out, because we've got to get the technological equipment and get all that loaded up and figure out this year. You know, our dream is to have it like real time where they just participate in the class. That's not going to happen this year. What we'll be looking at is a mix of probably some Edgenuity has AP classes, which would be good for them to have the materials, but we want them connected also to a class. So, you know, you could have some kids at Westmoreland connected to kids at Hendersonville. You could have somebody at, you know, Portland with Merrill Hyde, or White House with, you know, Station Camp. It gives us so many options. It really lets us leverage, you know, one of the positives that comes out is it lets us leverage our best teachers to teach, you know, our kids all across the county.
I think our ultimate goal is that we want to make sure that we capture content that we can scale, you know, year after year after year. So that's the goal of it.
Yeah.
But we got to get there.
Yeah.
We got to start somewhere to get it.
Yeah.
Mr. Wilson.
I just want to say thank you for bringing your enthusiasm. My favorite teachers in school many years ago was those that encouraged or made you think outside the box. And when Scott told us about you dissecting the squid, I fell in love with your thought process. So thank you so much. I think you're going to make a huge asset to this program. And I think a lot of people will just buy into it because of your enthusiasm.
Now, the squid, you have to thank Mr. Taylor, because I did store those squid in the faculty refrigerator. So that was I had to make that a quick thing in storing the squid there for the faculty refrigerator. So I was grateful, definitely given. Thank you.
And I wish more of our teachers would think outside the box like that.
Thank you, Mr. Wilkerson. Mr. Duncan.
Well, first, I'd like to thank everybody involved, because I did push to do some kind of end of pandemic, I wish we were there, kind of breakdown and find the positives, because there's so much negatives come out of the pandemic and the tornadoes and storms and you name it, what we're having in 2020. But it's amazing all the positive that is just on the cusp of rolling out, and it's amazing to see all of that silver lining starting to come to the surface. And, you know, I'm glad to sit on this board. I can't take zero credit for that. I pushed a little bit, but I want to thank every one of you for that. And I'm happy to participate. And I don't mind drinking from a fire hydrant. You keep doing what you're doing. You keep doing what you're doing, and I'll keep up some way. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Duncan. Any other questions? All right. That being said, thank y'all so much. Fantastic job. We really enjoyed that.
Thank you.
Great. Okay, now we get back to the agenda that has the things that I'm supposed to talk about on the agenda. Mr. Johnson. That was no kudos, by the way. New business, discussion interaction regarding the 2021 board meeting schedule. Is there a motion? Ms. Andrews was first, Ms. Brown was second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Next item on the agenda, discussion interaction to approve purchase and exemption from formal competitive solicitation policy, DJE. Is there a motion? Motion approved by Mr. Wise. Second by Mr. Duncan.
Mr.
Any
Chairman,
discussion?
I'll tell you what this is. We
All right.
have a board policy that we are to seek competitive bids for any item above $10,000, but state law is 25. So we may come back to you in the future and have that adjusted to match state law. But it's a policy that's been here for a long, long time, and we've always obviously complied with that. This is specifically for ServPro to clean Long Hollow Baptist Church after every graduation service. So we leave it as good as we found it. So that's the reason that this is kind of one of those things we're asking you to set aside policy and then approve the bid and consent, which you've already done. So I just want to make sure you knew why that was on there.
All right, any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed?
I think that's a good thing also for maintenance, transportation. There's so many of the issues that when this policy was put in place, that now $10,000 won't touch.
We'll probably be back to you in the future once we kind of get past the start of school. We're to a point where
In fact, when I first came on board, I think it was 5.
And it'll probably come up in the policy review that we have on schedule once we get back on track. It'll probably be in the policy review section when we deal with finance section. So we'll probably just bring it up at that point and make it match. Thank you, Doctor.
Seeing none, motion carried. Next item on the agenda, discussion and or action regarding amendments to the federal budget. Is there a motion? Motion approved by Mr. Wise. Second by Mr. Wilkerson. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. All opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Next item on the agenda, discussion of study session items. Did I miss something?
I think we missed general purpose budget.
Yes, I did. I was just seeing if y'all were paying attention. There we go. Discussion and interaction regarding amendments to the general purpose budget. Most approved, Mr. Wise, second by Ms. Hayes. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. All opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Now, study session items, is that right? Is that where we're at? All right. Study session items, we know what's coming up July 14th.
We know obviously the 14th, but I think all of you, we've had that discussion already, but all of you know how we operate here. So we will call a meeting if that's what the board wishes to do. We'll call as many as you want to have before we get to the 21st, because we know that we want to take show you the plan, talk about it, make sure that you feel good about it, that we feel like we can implement it, and that our principals feel good about that as we move forward. And so however the board chooses to do that, it's fine with us. We'll meet as many times you want to.
Thank you, Dr. Phillips. On the agenda is communication from board members. Start us off.
Sir, thank you, Chairman Brewer. I want to give a shout out to all the hands involved in the Ellis turn lane. It looks awesome. I mean, I've had parents call and they've just been so excited, and so it looks great and very efficient. Got in there, got the job done. So I know that didn't happen overnight, but the plans, I appreciate the support. Chris Harrison, great engineering plan. Don Long just overseeing the work these crews got out there and did it, and it looks marvelous.
Looks really good. Looks good.
So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank Ms. Hayes. Ms. Bachman?
Yeah, thank you. Just a couple things. We went over it, we already passed it, but I wanted to give a shout out to Scott Langford for adding the military history and the forensic courses. Of course, those are near and dear to my heart, so I think that's great. I think it's good that the students learn about our military history so that we don't repeat a lot of things that happened in the past. So, having said that, I think Kelly is doing a fantastic job keeping us appraised of what all is going on, and with the videos that she's out there, had placed out there, and with the kudos for Ben Perry. What an awesome student that he is. And if you indulge me for just a minute, a couple months ago, Kyle Craig had posted something on Facebook that Mr. Langford shared, and I don't know if you all saw this, but I think there's not too many teachers in here tonight, but I want them to know what he said. Teachers are amazing. The whole profession shifted in about 2010 to add accountability. The common opinion was that teachers wouldn't try unless there was something punitive to force them to try. Now, with no evaluations, no testing, and no accountability school report cards, teachers are completely redefining the way the job is done and are working in all hours of the day to do it. If someone thinks teachers have it easy, are lazy, or not creative, then I invite you to let me put you on a Zoom conference all day and night so you can watch and listen to what's happening. If you don't know what Zoom is, neither did a lot of teachers before last week, but now they are experts. Teachers don't work hard for the accountability, the praise, or the money, but they do work hard to do what is right and best for the kids. He wrote this as he was getting ready to leave White House. He said, "I feel blessed to be working with amazing teachers at White House and to have had the opportunity to have worked with great educators at Gallatin and Merrill Hyde. Innovation, determination, collaboration, persistence. These are all great words to describe teachers and what is currently happening, but the main word that defines a teacher right now is care." So I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bachman. Ms. Andrews.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I just want to say thank you too to everybody for jumping in both feet. I mean, to look back and to realize that all of this has happened over 3 months, it's insane. It's very, very overwhelming. And to just see how well it was done didn't happen by happen chance. I mean, it took everybody. And so I just want to say thank you for all of that. I also just want to communicate to the board that, as you know, a lot of times the last couple of years during the summer, Commissioner Shell and myself have sat down and communicated or developed a schedule for us to go visit schools and so forth. She and I spoke again this week, and obviously that will look different this year. We're kind of talking through what maybe we would do differently. We don't want to completely abandon that because we just think that that has been great, but it's probably going to look different this year, and we even talked about possibly looking at going to county buildings this year instead of maybe schools. So just know that unfortunately, as much as I love to plan things out and have a calendar, and I would love to be able to give that in August. That's obviously not going to happen this year, but the thought has not been completely abandoned, and we are working towards continuing.
Thank you, Ms. Andrews, and thank you for doing that, by the way. You and Commissioner Shell do a great job on that. Mr. Duncan.
Again, tonight's been a lot of thanks, and again, I want to thank everyone involved in graduation. Graduation is a special time, and it's hard for a lot of parents in this situation. So for them, I'd like to ask for their patience, because there is graduation this year. There's a lot of districts and a lot of states that aren't having graduation at all. There's a lot of universities that are mailing diplomas to their students. This district planned ahead, pushed it out as far as they could possibly push it out, and we're having graduations. So congratulations to the 2020 seniors. On a lighter note, we're getting turf at Beach. We're moving dirt, and the turf's going down soon, and the community is excited, and I just want to share that with everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Duncan. Ms. Hawkins?
Well, I have 3 points. My first is I just want to clarify when I was speaking about whether or not the board would vote in the decisions about how to reopen the schools. I was not making a statement as to that's what I want. It's more I was trying to understand if the attorney was telling us that's what we have to do. So I just want to make that clear that that was not me saying this is what I want to do. Secondly, I want to reiterate what Ms. Bachman said about Ben Perry. This is very big. He is, each year, Presidential Scholar, there is one male student and one female student from each state who is chosen. So this is a very, very big honor, and I think that Sumner County is well reflected by his accomplishments. It puts us on the map in the state of Tennessee. And third, I want to give a shout out to Dr. Phillips. In addition to all this unusual and unexpected dilemmas with the COVID response and the schools, I just want it to be known that you went above and beyond to help Station Camp High School have the graduation as close to what they were wanting. Originally, the regulations were that the students and the parents were in separate rooms during the diploma handoff, and that was just so painful. And Dr. Phillips stepped up, and I'm not sure who else was involved in that negotiations, but now we do have students graduating in front of their parents, and that's a big deal to them. Also, in addition to that, you were wrangling with the construction company at Liberty Creek to try to help some of the nearby neighbors who were hearing noises at 3 a.m. And so I just want that above and beyond. I'm not sure how you're doing it all, but
well, I have a great team, and luckily the principals, when we met and talked, and Noel Hollow was very gracious, and so that was
well, on behalf
pretty
of
easy
the
thing to
parents
do.
who have contacted me, I thank you.
Good, no problem. Thank you. All in a couple of days' work. No.
Thank you, Ms. Hawkins. Mr. Wise.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to commend our chairman. I've told him already. I don't know if all of you saw it or not, but he put out a fantastic video recognizing and honoring our retiring employees, and I enjoyed it so much I watched it twice.
Thank you, Mr. Wise. Ms. Brown?
I too appreciated that. I thought that was special and very nice, and I'm so glad we are going to get our graduations in. I wish we had done more consideration of football fields so they could have big families. But I think it's wonderful that we're not doing a McDonald's preview, drive-through, whatever. And I just think that they'll remember that probably more than anything. And another thing, I want to thank the instruction department in particular over this, trying to get through that change. I can imagine how it would be for me as a teacher or one person. But when you've got a department that's got to make all these decisions, make them immediately, throw them out there, and then you've got somebody, I don't own a computer, meaning a teacher, not a child, a teacher. And I'm sure he was met with that. And so to get through it to me is amazing, and do it so well is even better. And I'm thrilled to death to have Jean on board. Just because she's so enthusiastic, she makes everybody else want to hop on board. And that's a big part of anything. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Mr. Gregory?
First of all, I don't know how many of you did this. I did. And we have till the end of June to complete it if you want to or need to. The TSBA training. And I had registered for one of them, and of course they didn't have it. And then I got this email about all the different ones. And we have till the end of June. Now, I've completed mine sometime back. I'd rather go down there, I promise you.
Oh, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Did some of the rest of you do that online? You didn't? Okay. Well, anyway, no big deal. But I'd much rather go down there than have to sit for ever how many hours it was behind a computer. I didn't enjoy that. Next thing, do we have graduation in good shape, right?
We think so.
Now, what about kindergarten pre-registration? I know it's next week, but is it, you got it pretty well organized how to do it? Spread them out?
We think so.
Okay. The next thing, do you have quite a bit of media coverage ready for that?
Not to my knowledge.
I would, because it being, here in June rather than, it's 2 months later than usual. I'd use every source I could, because
Oh, I think, you mean, making sure parents are aware.
Yeah, we have.
We've
Oh,
got that
oh,
covered.
oh.
I'm sorry.
We thought you meant outside media covering it, but
Oh,
the
no.
communication about parents making sure they know, I think is good on that.
Yeah, okay, that's what I meant, I'm sorry. Have we had any problems? I noticed Mike Moore's not here. Mike Brown, I'm sorry. Have we had any problems with our athletic way it's gone?
No, I think our coaches have responded well, and our athletes have too, and so we really, Mike's been out checking to make sure they're doing what we ask them to do. We've, had, I think, 1 or 2 increases in number, from 10 to 15 to 20, which is pretty consistent with, what other peer groups are doing. So, really haven't had any, odd situations there that we've had to manage.
The reason I thought of that last night on the news, I wouldn't bring up the school's name if it hadn't been all over the news, but Columbia had a young man test positive, and they had to stop and will not get to start back for him after the dead period. And every member of that team has to be tested, and all the coaches be tested. So that happened in Columbia. And today, the NCAA is voting on about starting men's and women's, is it just basketball or some more, but just men's and women. They're voting today. They probably have now how to restrict it. And I noticed during the retirement, and I do appreciate that happening. And we had 3 in our community, bus drivers. Boy, you hate to lose bus drivers, especially in one community, especially if all 3 of them are really good bus drivers. And I knew all of them, and they're very, very good. And yesterday, my wife and I celebrated our anniversary. And I'm gonna tell you, it's been longer than some of you are old.
Thank you, Mr. Gregory. Mr. Wilkerson.
I too want to say how proud I am of Ben Perry's accomplishments. What a feat. And say thank you for the new parking lot at North Sumner. It looks absolutely marvelous. It just adds to the building. And to all of you that are fathers, happy Father's Day next week.
Thank you, Mr. Wilkerson. I am just so proud to be a part of an organization that runs like a well-oiled machine, and it starts from the top down and then from the bottom up and all in the middle and everybody concerned. When I have people come to my office, and we're getting a lot of them, by the way, with the 32% increase in taxes in Davidson County, we're getting a lot of people wanting to buy houses out here. Tell us about your school system. I'm like, sit down. I got 15 minutes. You know, I'm really proud of this system. Everybody's doing great, and for whatever it's worth, man, great job for all of you. Really appreciate you. And with that, I feel so adjourned.